We're all good. We're excited to get started. Anastasia, why don't you take it away?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As Emma mentioned, my name's Anastasia, and I'm the founder and creative director of the studio. Super excited to be here with you guys today and looking forward to sharing a bit about how I started my agency and how it can help you build your own as well. A bit about our studio. We focus primarily on branding. We do both identity and strategy work, but we also do a wide range of digital design as well. We work primarily with tech clients, just naturally being here in the Bay Area, but we also work with a lot of retail clients as well. Um, we've worked with some bigger companies like Twitter and Allbirds, but we've also worked with one-person startups and creative entrepreneurs as well. Most of you probably don't know me. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in San Francisco, specifically the Outer Richmond district.
Woo!
And yes, I never really got into art until late high school and was decided to get into design with the help of a guidance counselor. And to be honest, I don't think I really knew what design was at that point. But I ended up going to the School of Visual Arts in New York, which was an awesome experience. And I quickly and luckily learned what design was and fell in love with it. I also had the awesome experience to study abroad in France at the Paris College of Art before graduating. Um, After I got my BFA in design, I started working at creative agencies both here in the Bay Area and also abroad in Dublin, Ireland. And decided to try out freelancing because I had recently been laid off and was curious about it and just wanted to try it out and see how far I could get with it. Um, as I got into the flow of freelancing, it became clear that being my own boss and running my own business was the right path for me. I really loved having ownership over my work and over my creative process, and was just feeling a lot more fulfilled in my designs and in my work life in general, like that. Um, so I started taking less in-house contracts and more of my own clients or my own direct clients, which was the direction that I wanted to go in. But I really missed being able to meet talented creatives and collaborating with them on a daily basis. So I set my sights on starting an agency. And in 2018, I decided to take a stab at it. And I think I was about a month in before I realized that it was a lot more work than I originally anticipated and that I would need to save up a bit of money for it as well. So I had this awesome opportunity come to me to be the creative lead at Google Play for a year, which was perfect because I was able to save up money during that time and just sort of get things ready to launch the studio. And fast forward a bit, and here we are today, almost a year from launching. So I'm super excited to share with you guys a bit about what I've learned along the way and hopefully empower you all in your business endeavors as well. I want to start off by saying congrats to everybody here for having the motivation and the confidence to want to start your own studio or business practice. It can feel super overwhelming. So we just want to share a step-by-step guide of what you should do first and, share some personal experiences and some tips along the way as well. I want to note that having a strong portfolio and having some experience is crucial as well, but we're going to be focusing more on the tactical and logistical aspects of starting an agency. So we're going to talk a bit about setting up your business. We're going to talk about how to get clients, what to do when you get those clients, a bit about workflow, a bit about money, and then how to assess what you're doing and seeing if where you're spending your time is working as well. And as Emma mentioned, we're going to wrap up with some Q&A. Okay, so let's hop into it. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is come up with a business plan. And a business plan is super great because it gives you a roadmap. It helps you figure out what to do, what your future plans are going to be, and it just kind of helps you keep you on track along this process, right? I'd say you don't need to have the entire business plan down before you get going. Like, don't let that hold you back from starting your business. But it is helpful to get some of those sort of fundamental pieces down. And so I'd suggest starting out with defining what your services are, with a focus on how you want to position your company, and then also defining what your target audience is going to be. So you're going to want to create a profile of like your ideal customer or client, and sort of like dive into what their demographics are, where they spend their time, where they go to when they're looking for agencies. Just do some research on that, and the more comprehensive you can be, the better. And then I'd recommend establishing your vision and mission statement. So your vision statement is more of, it's supposed to be intended as a guide to help you make decisions down the road. And so it should address who you are, why you exist, and where you're going. On the other hand, the mission statement is sort of like how you make that vision happen on a practical sense. So it should be about 1 to 2 sentences, and to differentiate yourself as an agency. So once you kind of have those like basic pieces down, I'd recommend going through and defining what you expect your processes to be as an agency. So look at what your processes might be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly as well. And what you're doing is just sort of like anticipating what your needs are going to be, and just sort of looking out for your future self. So you'll also be able to get an idea of what your billable hours are, sort of based on what those processes are. You can see how much extra time you'll have to actually work on client projects like that too, which is really helpful in determining a budget, which we'll get into in a bit.
Anastasia, I have a question for you.
With that,
How did you document all of this? Did you just throw it in a PowerPoint? Like what was your process for determining and kind of getting this all down?
totally. Yeah, so originally it was just a Google Doc with like word vomit of everything I was like imagining for my business. And then eventually it got into like a nicer InDesign um, PDF, and it was something I was able to share. So
Cool.
um, great. So after you got like sort of the bare bones of your business plan, you want to start assembling your A team. So you're going to want to find somebody that can help you out in finance for things like taxes, somebody in law that can help you out with contracts, or if for some reason a client doesn't pay. It's also really helpful to have a business advisor as well that can give you advice on managing your business. And then lastly, creative too. So this can be either people that can give you feedback for your projects, or people that you can collaborate with, or potentially employees as well. Um, I'd say like most of the time, these are going to be your friends and like family and acquaintances, or people that you've worked with. But you can also do work trades if you're a little bit strapped on cash. You can do work trades, or you can just kind of go the traditional route and hire people for that as well. You may find that you need help in particular areas, like maybe you need help in marketing or SEO, in which case try to seek out people who specialize in those areas. I think the key is that you're not going to build your business alone, and you're not expected to. So don't be afraid to reach out for guidance and support as much as you can. Okay, so now you've got sort of your business plan and you've started to assemble your A team. Then it's time to decide what your budget is going to be. And the gist of this is basically you want to find your minimum expenses for both personally and also your business too. So we've created a worksheet that will help you figure this out. And we're going to be sharing a resource sheet with you guys at the end of this presentation, so you guys can download this worksheet and fill it out for yourself as well. So like on the personal side, we have things like home, auto, loans, just your typical business personal expenses. And then on the business side, we've got things for marketing, office expenses, things like that. From that, you have found out what your bare minimum expenses are. And I'd suggest adding around 30% to that, which is sort of a safe rate to determine for your taxes. And from that, you have your bare minimum, right? And you can divide that by the billable hours that you found from your business plan to find out what your very minimum hourly rate should be. I would suggest having a goal to make about twice that. And so that way you have this sort of 50-30-20 setup. And so you've got 50% for your absolute necessities, 30% for things that you want but don't necessarily need, and then 20% for savings.
Question for you.
Um,
Would
yes,
you say that hiring an accountant is absolutely essential? And the reason I ask this is because the risk, right? If you kind of
right.
mess up on some number, it could have a, kind of a horrible consequence. So as
Yeah.
far as your A team, when you're looking at your A team, would you say that that is a necessary expense, is to hire one who knows what they're doing?
Yeah, so we did hire somebody specifically for this just because there were so many other things to work out and I just didn't want to deal with it, and just, it's just a nightmare if there is some potential problem. So we did end up hiring an accountant who also sort of doubled as a financial advisor too, which ended up being great just because, especially in the beginning process, we ended up having a ton of questions about where to best spend our money, and they were great um, at sort of advising us for that. So personally, I'd recommend that as sort of a crucial element. But some people may be better at taxes than I am, so it depends. Um, cool. Okay, so once you've got your budget done, you're pretty much ready to launch your business. This is one of the things when I was starting out that I just wish that somebody could just give me the step by steps instead of spending like hours Googling and on these government websites and like clicking around to links to figure out where to go. So again, we're going to be sharing a resource sheet at the end of this, and it'll have all of the links to the websites that you need to go to do these things. We'll just do a quick overview of it. So you're going to want to choose a name for your business and see if it's available. It needs to be available within California or whatever state that you're based in. And if the name is available, then you can reserve it. And then start getting into setting up your contact details for your business if you don't already have that. So get your email account set up that you want associated with your business. If you want a telephone number, I would suggest getting a PO box if you don't have a dedicated workspace yet, because whatever address that you put in for your business is going to be public. So um, then you decide on your business structure. And there's about four main types of business structures. You've got sole proprietorship and partnerships, which are really great to start out. Sole proprietorships mean that you're the only employee of that company, whereas partnerships are appropriate if you're starting a business with somebody else. And then we've got LLCs and corporations, which are a little bit more of a complicated business structure and a bit more expensive, but they have varying levels of liabilities and allow you to have employees as well. Registering, once you've decided on your structure, you can register your business. It's pretty easy. It takes like within, in California, it was about $70 and, got it done in a half an hour. So you're pretty much good to go. And then the last step that you need to do is get an EIN, which is an employer identification number. And that's just so that you don't have to put your social security on tax forms for projects and stuff like that. Okay, so at this point, you've got your business pretty much set up, and you need to find some clients. Um, that was like always my question when I was starting out. How do you get clients? It seemed like everybody said that it's your friends and family or people you know. And I was just like, I need something else other than that. But you know, so okay, starting with that, I would recommend just gathering all of your contacts into a CMS or a customer management software. We use HubSpot, and it's just great to like sort of set up email templates so that you can, chug out emails to people that you know, but also setting up reminders to follow up with people too. But besides people that you know, digital marketing is also a super powerful tool for getting getting yourself in front of your target audience. This is one of the things that we decided to sort of save up and invest in a marketing strategist to help us with. Um, she was great because she helped us figure out like what social platforms we wanted to be on, what type of content we should post. And then she also got us thinking about coming up with a newsletter and working on a blog and how that can affect our SEO or search engine optimization as well. Um, and that once we sort of got that going and we had a good standing for our SEO, we were able to start working on some ads too, which is another way to find clients. I would just say like if you do decide to work on some ads or especially with digital advertising, make sure you get your SEO done first or start working on that and expect to spend a little bit of time and money just sort of figuring out what's best for you guys. So for us, we tried like LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads, Google search ads, Google display ads. We tried a bunch of different things. And we ended up finding that doing sort of segmented ads. So for us, it was like we were targeting a specific service that we were offering. And we also offered a lead bait in those ads. So that meant that like, we would ask people to enter their email and they would get like a free checklist or something like that.
So that's
We found yeah, and so we found that that worked best, and it was something that I just didn't even think about when we were starting ads. But that ended up working out really well for us. Um, so then, yeah, and last two things that to mention are networking, super powerful, right? Like go to events, have drinks, have coffee with people that are within your target audience. Like within time reason. Don't just spend your whole day having drinks with people. We ended up joining a women's co-working space called The Wing, which is where Emma and I met. And it's been awesome to connect with people like that. And it's also turned into some projects for us as well. So just, find out where your audience is and go there and speak face to face with them because, that connection is really powerful. And then lastly, outreach, right? So if you guys have dream clients that you want to work for, find their email addresses, guess their email addresses, find their LinkedIn's, like get in touch with them. And one thing that I was really surprised at was that like following up even 5 times is sort of normal in the sales world. And I was really surprised to find people like, we would reach out and follow up 4 times. And then on the 5th time, they'd respond and be interested, So I think people just get busy and don't be afraid to follow up with them.
Anastasia, we have a question that I think is perfect for right now.
Okay.
So it's from Suyash Joshi. How do
Mhm.
you create a unique brand so you're not like any other agency that are competing for the same business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've got this post up on our blog. If you guys go to anastasiasalazar.com/design-blog, I'll pop it into the comments there. But we've got a blog post specifically on like working on a brand strategy and sort of finding what your niche is. Something that was helpful for me at least to sort of find that was like looking at competitors and doing what they call a SWOT analysis, where you sort of look at your competitors and start looking at what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, and sort of gauging where you are in comparison to that. And that sort of brought out certain things that I was thinking was our strong suits were other people's strong suits too. So we sort of like repositioned to focus more on certain services that weren't in our direct competitors. But yeah, again, I'll pop in that that blog post into the comment box at the end. So cool. So once you get in touch with a client, set up an initial call with them to sort of gauge their needs, try to get to see what their budget might be, their timeline, how much creative freedom there's going to be. And I would say during that initial call, set up another call to go over a proposal with them. And the reason I recommend that is a lot of times you can send out a proposal to your client and it'll just sit with them. And it could be because they're busy, it could be because the estimate is too high. I mean, for one reason or another, it'll just sit with them and you won't hear from them for a little while. And if you set up a call to go over it, you have a chance to sort of explain better what your approach is going to be, but you can also gauge like their initial reaction and sort of figure out what's working and what's not. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about workflow. Like once you get a bite. So starting off with pricing, right? So you can charge hourly or a flat rate for your services. We tend to charge a flat rate unless the scope is not super defined and we're not exactly sure how much time we're going to spend on it. Um, so the way we price is pretty much based on how much time we're going to spend, but we also take into consideration licensing. So, for example, like if you're a photographer and you're selling a photo for like an internal presentation, it's probably going to be less than if you're selling it for like outdoor advertising all over the world. We also take into consideration how much creative freedom there is, how big the client is, their timeline. Like if they need it turned around in 24 hours, we're probably going to charge a rush rate for that. And then also our expertise too. I'd say it doesn't change the price drastically, but each of those factors will add or subtract like 10 to 20%.
And for those where you get more creative freedom, you charge less.
Yeah. If it's like
flex your
Yeah, and if it's something we're really excited about, and just, are passionate about, we'll charge less for it, like yeah, definitely.
cool.
And then again, like I would suggest showing a range in that proposal too, especially when you're starting out, just because sometimes you'll send over an estimate and be like, okay, I think it's going to be about X amount. And if that's too high for the client, you might just lose them at that point. And so showing a range, so, even if that range is like a smaller scope or something like that, like it just kind of leaves room for discussion, rather than just like, oh, this is too high, it doesn't work. And then lastly, the last note on payments is to invoice in clumps, right? So we usually will do like have them pay 50% up front and 50% at the end. And this just gives you a little bit more protection. Like if for some reason the client doesn't pay, you can kind of hold off work until you get things sorted out. And it just gives you a little bit more protection on your income flow. With clients, I'd say just the biggest thing is communication. Remember that you're building a relationship with your clients and like a rapport with them. But besides being enjoyable to work with, it's also really important to communicate the expectations, right? And, I would suggest going to, to the extent of rewriting the brief for the client. I mean, it's really rare that you get like a full, complete brief. And so doing that just sort of helps manage expectations, along with sort of reiterating what you heard when you're presenting your work and explaining the next steps, and just trying to do as much as you can face to face, because I think a lot of times like over email or copy, things can get kind of misconstrued. It just makes things a whole lot easier. So face to face can be, via Zoom nowadays too. Time management. So things are going to get super busy, and just try to streamline things as much as you can. So like, for example, if you plan on presenting your work very often, then maybe you want to make a presentation template or an invoice template, basically anything that you can find to like reuse work that you've already done. We also use a task management software. The one that we use is called Thrive Solo, but there's also like Monday.com I've heard is great, and there's other ones too. Just makes your life a whole lot easier. And a lot of those softwares have places that you can log your hours to, which is very helpful when it gets into time to assess what you're doing, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then towards the sort of end of this work cycle, one thing I recommend is just really empowering your clients with whatever deliverables you're handing over to them. So like for us, we do a lot of brand identities, and we'll often hold a workshop with a leadership team to sort of onboard them and teach them how to use those pieces. And I think that's the fun part about like getting other people excited about being creative, but it also makes your agency look good and also ensures that they're going to be able to use whatever you're passing over to them. Don't forget to reach out for reviews on or ask for referrals at the end of the cycle, and just make sure you're staying in touch with clients that you've worked with before, whether that's through just like a quick note to them every few months or so. I know some agencies will send out like cool promos around the holidays. Just find a way to remind them of you. Okay, big question that we get all the time. Taxes.
Taxes.
So basically, as a business, you're not going to pay yearly. You're going to pay quarterly, and as a business, you pay estimated quarterly taxes for both federal and state, and they're basically due 2 weeks after the end of a quarter. And so those dates are April 15th, June 15th, September 16th, and January 15th. I think I mentioned earlier, but you're going to want to save about 30%. That's like a general good rule of thumb
For
for
any
taxes.
self-employed person.
What's that?
For any self-employed person, 30%.
Yes. Yes.
I can attest.
One thing that was really helpful that our financial advisor recommended was to log all of your expenses, which at first I was like, do you really need to save all of your receipts? The answer is yes. Take a picture of it, like put it in a drive or something. But our financial advisor recommended that as we start logging our expenses, to log them according to the categories that you report your expenses are on. So all of those things are listed on a Schedule C tax form, which again will be part of the resources that we share with you guys. But some of those categories are like advertising, contract labor, deductible meals, things like that. So awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to sort of assess what you're doing and to see if where you're spending your time is working. This may feel like way off in the future for some of you, but I'm talking about it now just because I wish that I had sort of started tracking some of our metrics and logging some of what we did in the early days, because some of that data you can't really get back. Um, so to what I would recommend doing is once a quarter setting up your KPIs and OKRs, which is key performance indicators or objective key results. You can think of KPIs as sort of like the numbers that you want to track. So it's pretty much always like number of clients, number of projects, number of social media followers, whatever it may be. And then your OKRs are more like written goals to track. And I would suggest like the main ones to track with KPIs are going to be your revenue, your profit, your clients, the number of hours you worked, and the number of hours you billed. But you can also have specific ones for categories like marketing or sales. So like for example, a sales KPI could be number of outreach emails sent or something like that. And then on the OKRs list, these are things, again, they're more like written goals. So like for us, it could be create a product in Q2 or something like that. And again, you can sort of segment those out according to your administrative goals, your advertising goals, creative development goals. Like for us, we try to learn a new skill every quarter or spend a certain amount of hours doing that. And this is great because like once you start tracking where you're spending your time and are able to look at the metrics and data that correspond with it. So like let's say you're spending like, I don't know, some crazy amount of time doing sales emails and you're seeing that like my clients haven't improved, then you can say, okay, like let's focus our efforts elsewhere. Again, like there's endless things to do when you're starting out a company, which is exciting. Like you can take it in a lot of different ways. But what's been really helpful is sort of to ask yourself what's to focus on this guiding question, which is how impactful is it to your main target? and ask yourself, like, is it high, medium, or low impact on my main target? Majority of the time for new businesses, it's going to be your revenue or how many clients that you have. And in conjunction with that, ask yourself how complex it is and use those two guiding questions to help determine if it's worth spending your time in.
Yeah, so we actually have a few questions. A lot of people are interested in kind of the money aspect of it and getting started. So
Yes.
the first one is how much time did it take for you to reach your minimum income goal? And then there's a second one that I think you might be able to loop in, which is
Mhm.
what is a startup cost? How much money should I borrow? Should I start with or borrow from a bank?
Mhm. Okay, so I would recommend saving about 5 months of your expenses. There's no like you need to have 5 months or you can't make it. But if you don't, if you haven't started freelancing as you're working at your full time job, and you're just sort of quitting cold turkey and starting your agency, it's 5 months of expenses for both personal and business is a pretty like safe range to give yourself time to get things up. For us, so how long did it take before we met our minimum goal? Um, that's a good question. I think it took about seven, you know, probably like 6 months. I'm trying to think of like what our original minimum goal was, but the first 6 months were definitely the hardest because you're spending a lot of time like doing things just to get things set up and find clients. And so, yeah, it took a few months before we were able to like secure some clients and be able to meet those minimum goals. And luckily, like having some money saved up to give you a little bit of a cushion there is helpful.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so, lastly, like most importantly, I would say just like stay inspired, right? Remember why you love doing design or whatever your craft is so much in the first place. For me, what gets me inspired is seeing other people's work that I admire, going to exhibits, buying magazines, exposing myself to new work, connecting with people in the design community like you all, and watching, attending talks, things like that. I think like staying inspired is what's gonna keep you motivated and give you that extra push on days that you might be feeling a little burnt out, and really just let that passion drive you. Um, so yeah, to wrap things up, we've got a summary, and we're going to be answering some questions in a bit. But if we don't happen to get to all of the questions today, we're going to have answers to everything on our blog with a summary. You guys can get to that blog at anastasiasalazar.com/design hyphen blog, and it should pop up in the CTA in a little bit on your screen as well if you just click on the button, all the resources you need. Um, so
Yay.
yeah, let's have into some Q&A.
Yeah. So